Hello and welcome to WNHH's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines, the stories that make New Haven tick. Mayor Toni Harp makes New Haven tick morning and night. She's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. Welcome, Mayor Harp, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you,
Have we
Paul.
seen each other since the New Year?
I think we may have run across each other. I don't know if we really had an official meeting.
That's right. Okay, well, a very happy 2019 to you. If you have a question for the mayor, feel free to pop it to us via Facebook Live. Go to the New Haven Independent Facebook page. You'll see the video right there. And if you're Bob, you can call. Thanks to Gateway Community College and Bertram Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. So how you doing in early 2019 here, Mayor Hart?
Well, it's, the weather's been so mild. I mean, just rain here and there, but other than that, it's been a beautiful new year.
That's true. I look at the forecast. So for tomorrow, there might be a little rain and sleep. In general, it's rain in the 40s. Those could all be headache, costly, expensive for the city snow removal.
Absolutely. It really could be. So we're grateful at least that it won't happen now. It'll probably happen in April.
Yeah, I know. I know. They always kick us when we think we're out the door.
Yeah.
And you already, the year is young. You've already met you've hosted 3 kings in New Haven already as the year starts.
Yeah.
What was it like welcoming royalty in the Hill last week?
Well, it was really great. Like there were...
Melchior, is that what you call them?
What is it?
Melchior or something?
Oh, maybe so. You probably know more than I do about that. But
the 3 kings aren't my wheelhouse, but...
okay. I don't know their names, but I believe that I could see some community personalities through some.
Like Joey Rodriguez, Peter Blazzini type of. So it was 3 Kings Day. Actually, is it 3 Kings Day is today, isn't it?
I thought it was the 6th. Yeah.
Oh, it's yesterday. Okay, but they got it started early at Casa now, where they always do.
Yeah.
And you were there, and the people dressed up as the 3 kings to give gifts to everyone in the neighborhood.
To the children, yes.
Big Latino event. I mean, that's sort of Latino community celebrates 3 Kings Day.
They do, and I think that actually even in Christian churches, they end the whole celebration of Christmas on January 6th. It's the day of Epiphany.
Mm. So that's where you get the 12 days of Christmas and everything.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's kind of your mayor. Kind of it's an education. You see how everybody celebrates
how they
holidays
celebrate
and how they get.
Yeah.
And it must be nice to do it with them.
No, it's a lot of fun. Oh, it's really wonderful to see the look on the kids' faces. Whether it be from a Santa giveaway or a 3 Kings giveaway, everybody's so excited about toys and the whole celebration. Usually, there's food too.
That's the important part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at Casa Otonel, it was the Black and Hispanic Caucus and Puerto Ricans United, as well as the board at Casa Otonel that put this together for the entire community over in Hill North, I guess it is.
And I will never learn Hill North and South because I always argue they're East and West. And the Hispanic firefighters, I think, are doing something in Fairhaven later this week.
They are, yes.
And Casa Otonel has a great relationship with its neighbor. It always has. It's the big senior tower, but they have a community center, and they always bring kids from the neighborhood in with the older folks who live there. I always like that.
They were the first organization to recognize that grandparents raise grandchildren. And so they have a facility across the street from Casa Otonel.
Is that Linda? Casa Linda?
Yes. And they,
so
it's grandparents and grandchildren. So it's multi-generational. And I really think that was really very far-sighted on their part to recognize this cultural thing that occurs not just in Hispanic families, but you see it also in African American families where grandparents are raising grandchildren, but they built housing to support that, and I think that's really an important nod that we should give that organization for being innovative in a way that really helps cultural change. Yeah,
watching what's going on in the culture and adapting to it. I think the only reason I knew Melchior is I edited the story about you and the Kings. Alan Appel was there on Friday. That's where I got that one.
Okay.
But, and tonight, again, this is an issue that doesn't directly affect your decision making, but you've been in the mix on it, which is the Civilian Review Board, a body to have citizens watch what the cops do if there are allegations of misconduct. We had one. It was weak. There was a referendum. Voters said, urged by the Board of Alders, said make a new law to make it tougher. Then the Board of Alders spent 5 years and counting, trying to get an ordinance people like. There's now a version going tonight. The argument is one of the main arguments has been, should they have subpoena power? Your Corporation Counsel has written that they definitely have legal authority for subpoena power. The alders had gotten a legal opinion, said maybe they don't, so they were fighting with activists about it. What's your sense of tonight when the vote comes?
Well, in my discussion with President Walker, I think that she's going to assume that the Corporation Counsel is right in this instance, that they already have it. I believe that they will do something that sort of nods to that in what it is that they provide. I know that they think that having the ability to do investigations is really important, as do the advocates, and I think that you'll see something like that in there. My concern, and I think that they've taken care of that too, although I've got to see how it's finally written, is that we assure that we get people to serve so that there's a mechanism.
And that's harder than people think. It's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time, and there's got to be a mechanism in place to do that. And so I've been assured that that will happen, because that, like something as small as that can just, like ruin the whole initiative if you can't get people on there, and you can't get quorums and that sort of thing. So
yeah, and that used to happen, right? Didn't they not always get quorums?
Oh, it did. I think that was one of the major problems that we had. So hopefully that little problem will be fixed. They will pass an ordinance that will work and will hopefully soon become operational. And
you said you would sign whatever version they agree on.
I did say that, and I will.
Okay.
They've worked really, really hard on it, and I've really got to give the Board of Alders compliments on how hard they've worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
They've worked with advocates. They've worked with the police department, the police commission. They've worked with some of the older initial advocates, with
Emma Jones.
Emma
Where this
Jones.
all started. This is the end of a 21-year journey for her after she lost her son from an
Right.
East Haven cop who had an outrageous shooting death of her
So
son.
I was told the leaders spent a lot of time with her, and that they've come to some consensus. So I hope that's the case.
But this is New Haven, of course. So even though everyone now agrees they have subpoena power, they're arguing about how it will be written into the ordinance. So not Emma Jones. She wants them to go ahead and vote on it tonight in favor. Other advocates are holding a press conference at 6 to say don't vote tonight, because they say it's not enough to put in the preamble. They want it written in there that they have the power, and the alder leaders are saying you have the power. We can acknowledge it in passing, but we don't have writing it into the. So it's kind of picky. It's getting a little.
I think it's
nitpicky.
getting a little nitpicky, and honestly, I think let's do the Citizen Review Board.
Mhm.
Let's pass it. You've got investigation power. We believe that you have the power to subpoena. Use it. If it turns out then you don't have it, and that we are sued, you're not going to be sued. The city will be. Then we'll try to fix it then. But if it turns out that you already have it, putting it in there is redundant, right? So I'm going to trust the Board of Alders on this.
Mm-hmm.
They've worked really hard on it for many years now.
With no gun to their head, but when they put there.
Yeah, exactly.
So last Thursday night, the Board of Alders leadership had a 2-hour-plus meeting, actually the whole board, to discuss the pros and cons of how to proceed with this.
Right.
But they called it a Democratic caucus.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give you a little advance warning shot here. This is something that is very much of concern to me. So the whole board is a member. Every member of the Board of Alders is a member of the Board of Alders Democratic caucus. There are 28 Democrats and 2 people who are Democrats but ran as independents, so they get the caucus with them. So there's a law that says if any time a quorum of the Board of Alders meets or any legislative bodies, that has to be open to the public. But a party can hold a caucus. Remember the whole beer and pizza thing when you were on the board? So that law was written with the idea that not just one party equals the government. So now the Board of Alders never debates anything in public anymore. We never know who thinks what or why.
Mm-hmm.
You know because you meet with the leaders, but we in the public did not get to know. So if they have this pressing issue everyone's been wondering about, they are not going to debate it in public. Matter of fact, when people try to debate things in public, Alder Evans Rodriguez did recently, they get shut down. Not allowed to debate anything in public at their public caucus, at the meetings. They used the loophole of calling it a party caucus with the going against the intent of the law, which is that governing bodies, when they have a caucus, when they have a majority, should be meeting in public. To do this all in private. Any thoughts on that? I set you up here.
Well, you did set me up, and you also gave me the answer. It was a loophole, and so I think that they were technically abiding by the law, and so what you're concerned with is the spirit of the law.
Government transparency. Should people who are elected to office find loopholes to subvert the meaning and purpose of law and keep government secret? And is it okay, therefore, if it's legal?
I don't know that
you're not
that
the one who
was
does it, so I don't mean to be bearing down on you.
Well, I don't know that that was their intent. I don't think that they were trying to keep it secret. I think they were just trying to have a discussion among Democrats.
They feel like, but they're the Democrats on the entire board.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm getting an argument. Since they've been elected, they have never had a debate in public about any issue for the last 4 years. Everything is done privately in what is called a caucus.
And the interesting thing about that, not to change the subject too much, but you've got
the board. I'm giving you a hard time about something's not your bailiwick. I get
the board
so
of education that I am on, and there is debate, and people really don't like it.
Well, then have them move to Russia and not wait till we get there. And I'm sorry I gave you a hard time. I know it's not your bailiwick. This is something as a reporter, First Amendment is so important to me in government transparency.
Of course it is.
And the idea that elected officials feel that as long as they follow a loophole of a law, it's okay to subvert transparency and the purpose of law. It just really gets my goat. But that's for me to take up with them, not you. And I will. Bob McCormick, how you doing, buddy?
That's a good, hey, Paul and Mayor. That's kind of like a good segue to my question, Mayor. And by the way, Happy New Year's, Paul and Mayor Harper.
Happy New Year to you, Bob.
Happy New Year.
Disturbed about a story I heard on Friday night about the 17 teachers and staff who are on paid administrative leave over misconduct. I think that's kind of excessive, and the report had the union president, teachers union president, saying, well, anybody can call up on the phone.
DCF,
I guess he was referring to. So what is actually going on with these 17 that are on?
Thank you, Bob. And that was a story on the Channel 8 website I saw by Mario Boone.
Well, thank you, Mario. Ultimately, we have a superintendent who's very sensitive about matters that are brought to her attention through DCF reports. Evidently, when she was in Hartford, the superintendent of schools ignored those and was penalized significantly for that. And I think that's something that she would not like to have happen to her and to happen here. So, she is very careful about those kinds of things. So I think that's why you see those teachers out on administrative leave if there's been a DCF investigation or issue.
It's such an interesting point you bring up, Mayor Harp, and Bob will get to your next question in a minute. When you look at statistics,
I have a follow-up, but go ahead.
Yeah, when you look at statistics, you have to distinguish between how much is occurring and how much is being reported. So, for instance, until we get rid of rape in our society, we want there to be fewer rapes every year and more of them reported, because the big problem is that people don't report rapes and the system doesn't deal with them. So in New York, every kind of violent crime went down, reported violent crime except sexual assaults. And a lot of years in New Haven, I noticed that a lot of violent crime categories go down, but not sexual assault, which I actually think is good, unless it means there's more sexual assault, which I don't think it means. I think that in the era of Me Too, more people are coming forward. I mean, even in India now, you're reading about this, right? So I don't know if that's the case. My guess, without knowing more, I did not see anything in that article that dealt with the question of how much this relates to whether there's more incidents of problems of teachers or if it's just more people are calling, and therefore, as Mayor Harp just said, the superintendent wants to make sure to respond to calls. I mean, you have how many, 20, 30,000 students in the system?
We have 22,000.
Okay, so if you had, and they didn't say that all 17 of those suspensions had to do with DCF calls, Department of Children and Families.
Right.
So I would be surprised if anywhere in America a system of 22,000 kids did not have 10 to 15 calls at a time to the Child Welfare Agency. May be true, may not. So I think you're talking about a policy of responding to it, correct?
I think so. I think that and and sometimes when people know that you're going to respond in a certain way, they're going to make more calls too, whether they're accurate or not. And ultimately, it's up to the Department of Children and Families to decide whether or not an investigation is necessary and then to do an investigation. In the meantime, I believe that the superintendent has decided to err on the side of keeping kids safe.
And just editorial comment here. Congratulations to Carol Burks for taking this seriously, because few things are more important than the safety of children who might be in some bad situations. A lot of times, the only place we find out about that is when it shows up in school.
Right.
Bob McCormick, anything else you got for
Yeah,
the mayor?
but isn't there is there a time frame, or is the city has nothing to do with this? It's all DCF.
Yeah.
How long these suspensions may last?
Well, I think that the superintendent wants to make sure that a DCF investigation as well as an internal investigation has occurred, and and it really depends. Sometimes it takes a while for these things to be completed, and it really depends whether or not they can do an initial assessment that clears the educator or the adult in the system, or it may take a little bit longer. And I would agree with Paul that the superintendent is erring on the side of safety of the child.
And that's also another, Tony Hart, you've seen this having been a state legislator for 21 years. There are always these pendulum swings as a state in our policy toward child protection. There's a lot of pressure about keeping kids in their home if you can. And then a few high-profile cases develop or horrible things happen to a kid in the home where child welfare agencies had tried to keep the kid there. So then the pendulum swings the other way. And then all of a sudden, some kids are being taken from the home, and maybe it's not a good idea. It's hard to get it perfectly right. We obviously always try to err on the side of a child's safety. It's not a science.
Unfortunately, it's not a science.
But it's heart-wrenching.
It's heart-wrenching.
Not like talking about predicting whether the crime rate is going to go up or not.
And we know what happens to these young people that we don't help in time, that we don't provide a safety for. We know that harms them, but it also harms their future relationships with other people. So we've got to do all we can. It really, our future as a city and a state is at stake here when we think about the harm that can be done to these young people.
Bob, any other questions for Mayor Hart?
Yeah, I guess my last question is about the mayor attending the inauguration on Wednesday.
Oh, of the new governor. Governor Ned Lamont.
What celebration do you plan on?
Yeah, I'm going to go up to Hartford, and I'm hopefully going to see the House and the Senate sworn in, and then I'm going to see our new governor sworn in as well.
And will you still be there when he gives his speech, for his first speech, budget speech?
Oh, yes, I'm going to. Well,
it's not
the budget speech. It's just his overall speech, probably accepting the role as governor. And yes, I will. I plan to be there.
And you'll come back and report on Mayor Monday to let us know your reaction.
I will do that.
All right.
As a matter of fact, yesterday it was another Three Kings event, but also the service event. I think you covered it in your in the Independent. The governor was in New Haven at the children's community program over on Blake Street, and they had a Three Kings event, and they were highlighting some of the work that they do in their program, and they support DCF and some of the kids that run into difficulty there. And it was great to see the governor, Lieutenant Governor, Senator Blumenthal, Rosa DeLauro, and I. We were all there to really recognize the great work that this organization does in our community.
I'm also going to dispatch you also as our scene reporter to let us know who wears what and what the pomp and circumstances of the whole thing. You're listening to Mayor Monday and also the fashion scene reporting show of New Haven with Mayor Tony Hart at WNHH, your home for community radio, 103.5 FM, live stream, Hampton.org. Social media is lighting up with siding with me because I control the mic and therefore present things in a way that goes with my opinion about these private caucuses. DFA says, at the risk of sound like a broken record, the repeated use of, quote, private caucus sessions to exclude the public from debates on public business is a violation of the spirit, if not the letter, of open meeting laws. I do agree that.
You do, Paul,
Yeah.
huh?
And Gary Dorian's right. The intent is to keep it private to block the public to obfuscate. A question from Gary Dorian's is, what's the status of Nicole Jefferson? She was this Commission on Equal Opportunities a long time ago. She got fired. She appealed it. What's
think
going on?
that,
Is it over? Or
I
is it-
think that the city then appealed, and so we're still in court.
and is that a lawsuit or is that a Labor Department?
I think that our appeal is in the courts.
Okay. Aaron Good says, has the mayor talked to Governor-elect Lamont specifically about the issue of a second garage at Union Station and possible better ways to spend $60 million? Let's first let in our listeners on that. Thank you, Aaron, for your questions. They're always great. The state, for 20 years, was arguing with New Haven about whether to build a second garage at the train station. We finally got it approved, and then times changed, and a lot of people in New Haven felt like, from City Hall on down, that there need to be other things instead of a garage or in addition to a garage, from a bus transfer station to transit-oriented development, meaning stores or shops to go to, apartments right on the train line the way other cities are doing. And now with the change of administrations, at least the Lieutenant Governor, Susan Bysiewicz, came on the radio, says we're listening to New Haven. And this weekend, there was a charrette. It's a fun word.
I love that word.
Brainstorming session, yeah, I know.
It's a little French, you know.
Although the French are the ones that screwed us up with all these new brutalist buildings in the 60s, but watch out what you ask for. But brainstorming's good. And a lot of really smart people spent the weekend drawing. You could see their drawings in the New Haven Independent this morning about what they'd like to see on that plot of land as you're coming up the train station from downtown, next to where there's a parking garage now, instead of having it just be a parking garage, how they want to see like 10-story apartment buildings, shops. My favorite part of one of the drawings is across the street. They want to show street activity. They show someone riding a bicycle with a Y sweatshirt meaning Yale, which I thought really betrayed the class consciousness of the people who come up with these plans. I mean, it wasn't a Gateway kid riding home to the Hill.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Yale kid going to the train station, but that's my little 2 cents, which I'm doing too much 2 cents this morning. So back to the question. Aaron Good's first question is, have you spoken to the Lamont administration about reconsidering the garage plan?
No, I haven't personally spoken to them, but I know that members of my staff have spoken to them, and I think that they are open. And but you know, honestly, the Department of Transportation, this is just my view, and I'll probably get in a lot of trouble for saying it.
I love when you get in trouble.
Very bureaucratic. When I was in the legislature, we used to think of it as its own country. And so, you know, what I would say to those people who participated in the charrette, that if you have comments that you want to make for the Department of Transportation to take seriously, you've got to get them in by close of business tomorrow.
So your answer to Aaron Good, if I have it correctly, is you haven't personally spoken to them, but your staff has. You want to see change. It's hard because of the way DOT moves sclerotically as a bureaucracy, and that you want citizens not just to wait for you to talk to them, but to themselves weigh in with the state. There's a way to do that. I'm going to give you the email and the phone number. However, you don't have to write it down. You can go to the New Haven Independent, go to the article, top of the homepage, and at the end it has the same information. It's John Wyskiel, John period, Wyskiel, John.Wyskiel at ct.gov. And here's his phone number if you want to write it down. And I'm telling you that in advance so you get a chance to write it down. 860-594-3303. 860-594-3303. And if you just want to make it simple, go to that story about the Union Avenue charrette and go to the bottom of the page. And that has that info. So, Mayor Harp, I had another thought reading that article. So a lot of times people like the Urban Design League, which I love, that really think about issues in a smart way, an interesting way. I sometimes feel like it's great to have people talk about what's perfect and ideal. But that in the real world, you can't always get what's perfect and ideal. And if you hold out for that, sometimes you get nothing. So when we did before you became mayor, there was a deal struck to build on the Coliseum site, where the Coliseum was. And the developer was picked with someone who promised to do everything that we in New Haven wanted: the open space, the hotel, the apartments, the offices. And they won because other developers said they're not going to be able to get financing to do all that. So we picked what we thought was the ideal, and it never happened. Right? 6 years later, you're trying to pick up from that and get some other person. You got a new person try again. They're relooking at it. Is that the same case here? We'd like it sounds like a lot of people would love to have a 10-story. I'm not sure. I don't love 10-story buildings, but they want to have a 10-story apartment building with shops and lots of bike space and bus depot. I guess you'd like to have right on Union Station next to the garage. Do you think that's realistic? Should we be holding out for that, or is it in fact good to talk about hold out for what we want best and then negotiate?
Well, I think I'm more of the holdout for what we think is best and then negotiate to get the best deal that we can get. Look, it's been clear to me all along that the Department of Transportation has its own needs that it wants to be met by that space. And some of that has to do with parking of its employees. That's what I believe.
Right, and they responded to that. When you said that last time, they wrote in to say there will be zero parking for employees there. Are they playing a shell game?
Well, maybe they'll be parking in the old parking lot.
That wasn't there before, and then you're moving the people there. That was my guess.
Yeah, because in all honesty, every time I look up behind the Union Station, that area right behind it, and sort of even beginning to take on more of the sort of back part of Sargent Drive, there are more and more of those buildings that are owned by the Department of Transportation that service the railroad. The people who work there have got to park somewhere. And so...
but does it need to be prime transit-oriented development land?
Well, but where else would it be? And I think the real question is, so they will find a place for them to park. And I would guess that at some point, it may be the old garage. So they're going to say it's not the new garage. Well, then, but I think it's going to be in one of those two garages. And I think that that's part of the pressure that makes them want to develop garages there. When you think about it, they offer free parking, I think it is in West Haven. They don't charge enough up and down the line. Our parking garage now is about 90% full, so it's not 100% full all the time like it used to be. And it makes money. It makes money for them. It makes money for the parking authority, a little bit for the city. And so, and it's one of the few that does that. And and so I think that it's the money and it's the parking that they're very interested in preserving and
I seem to
controlling.
remember an idea floated by the HARP administration to have DOT build a walkway above the track or below the track to
Right.
connect people to Long Wharf. It could also connect them to employee parking that would not be in a prime development space.
We did, and they said they could not do that because they
Alright.
did not want the public to be crossing the railroad tracks, and it had something to do with Homeland Security.
But they crossed the railroad track on State Street.
Well, they don't want to do it there for some reason.
That's interesting.
It was interesting.
Because we never know what Homeland Security's thinking. We know they can sometimes be exaggerating. Other times they know things we don't know.
Perhaps, and I don't know that they have a huge space there where they repair trains, and so
That's what I'm thinking. Have their employees park there.
well, except I don't know that there's that much land there that that they control.
I guess we might have to give up like a tiny part of the quote-unquote Vision Trail. Maybe there's a lot there where they could build a several-story surface structure.
What's possible?
I don't know. We're not going to figure this all out. But it sounds like you got some ideas you're going to talk to them about.
Yeah, I
And,
mean, I think that well, we certainly do, and we really don't think that what they've shown us is really what we'd like to do, and we'd like to rethink it. And obviously, we don't need it as much today as we needed it
Right.
maybe 3 years ago, and we probably will need it even less 5-10 years down the road.
I do think the Lamont people get transit-oriented development. They at least made a big deal about that. And that's
Mhm.
sort of what the charrette people are really talking about this weekend. That's what you people really are talking about, as well as like mass transit alternatives to walking. They've named a former head of the Metro North Railroad to be the new head of the Department of Transportation.
Well, that's a good.
Yeah.
sign,
So
I
I'm really
think.
looking. What's that going to mean? It's going to be good for trains. We got to figure.
I
Will
hope
it
so.
also be good for the bikes and the bus service? Because will he care about that, or will he care about parking for trains over a bus connecting station or bike storage.
What I hope he cares about is how efficient the trains are, because right now it can take you 2.5 hours to get down to New York.
2.5?
Well, it's been sometimes depends upon whether or not there's
Wow.
something that happens. You take one of those slow trains that stops a gazillion places, and you can't get down there. You could get down to New York from New Haven a lot faster in 1954 than you can today.
Wow. Well, so that's got to change.
It's got to change.
And we're going to change it beginning here on Mayor Monday, which you're listening to at WNHH FM 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org.
And the other thing that I think is really important around trains is it's because it's multi-state. You've really got to have somebody who knows how those systems and the politics of those systems works. And so I believe that the new commissioner brings that to the table as well.
All right. So over the break with the holidays, I noticed that you were in town and doing a lot. And the reason I knew that is because I had the misfortune of having too much time in my hand, and I was looking at Facebook too much. And man, you were all over Facebook. Is this a new thing? You're like, I saw you in a coffee shop tweeting. I mean, video the new year. I saw you at church on New Year's Eve talking about what they were talking about. I saw you at the basketball game. Is this a new thing? Is Tony getting to step up her social media game?
I'm trying to learn a little bit about Facebook. It's almost like a system of study that you have to engage in.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's like getting your degree. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to learn. I think it's a lot of fun sometimes.
I think Facebook Live is great.
Yeah.
And I think you do it well. I remember when you did it during the snowstorm, riding it. But is this partly like a political thing? Like, I think everyone who runs for office now, they're being told that you have to be on Facebook and Twitter a lot. I mean, look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she's using it really well, whether it was to document what it's like to open an office there, to reporting on the bartender she met who was an unpaid intern at the Capitol working a second job and getting that changed, to responding to the attacks, all these sexist attacks on her because they don't like that a girl, quote unquote, is having a lot of influence, and they made fun of her for having an old video of her and her friends in high school doing or college dancing like the Breakfast Club. You follow that? So she put this great video back of dancing in front of her congressional office to the song War. So, I mean, and if you look at Beto O'Rourke, I would argue it's because of Facebook Live and other social media that he is now considered a leading contender for the presidency. I mean, are you and everybody running for office getting that advice? Get closer contact, communicate with your constituents by being on social media a lot?
I got that advice before even thinking about running again. A lot of people had come to me. My hairdresser is really big on social media, and she would always criticize me every Saturday or Sunday. Why aren't you on social media? People want to see what you do, blah, blah, blah. So it's not just, it's actually the mayoralty is requiring more and more of that.
Yeah, I think you identified it, that it's important to have fun. I mean, people seem to respond to genuinity. Like I was talking to someone the other day who was a conservative, has decided he really likes Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because he feels she's genuine on social media.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Because social media is like the weather. It can be a force for good or bad, right?
I think it could be. Well, we've seen where it's done some harm to people.
Real harm.
Yeah.
And also a lot of kind of nonsense people spend all their time with when they could be doing other things like solving cancer, curing cancer. But it really, when you're having fun with it and being yourself, I think it can be a force for good. I'm thinking about how Bernie Sanders became this bizarre out of nowhere candidate because he was doing these didactic 1960s, 50s style socialist diatribes on on Facebook. And all these young people dug it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they saw what he was and they kind of felt it was sincere,
And I think that that's another thing that people are looking for. I think they really want to know what people are like as human beings. And if they got a chance, if you're, if you're a congresswoman or congressman, you have, like 350,000 people that you're responsible for. Likely not everybody's going to get to know you, but they'll have a better sense of who you are if there's a way for you to communicate that. And Facebook seems to work. And
Instagram, I guess, which I don't use or know.
And Twitter, is that what it's called?
Oh God, that's a menace, but makes people stupid, I think. But anyway, Ocasio-Cortez has over 1 million followers, more than Nancy Pelosi. She's a threat to Trump now on this. So interesting.
Very good.
But anyway, keep it up. We love it. The other thing I find interesting is, a mayor gets to go around everywhere in town.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't have known about that basketball game. you
Yeah.
know, what was happening at that church. It's kind of a cool way. And I do think politicians and companies are the media now as well as we are. Different kind of media. People, I think there's always a need for independent media so people can feel this is someone who doesn't necessarily have a stake, or sometimes they do and they lie about it. We lie about it, whatever. But I think that that is a genuine role of government now to be a media outlet of its own. I mean, now people really don't need the independent to find out about. We do help reach a few people about, let's say, snowstorm restrictions, and it's good. Your strategy, which is the right strategy, is to have every media outlet do it, just so you reach everybody. But most of them get it from your alerts and your own media, right?
I think they do, and you know some of the phone work that we do. So
And I think
yes.
it's kind of good to have some of the power taken away from the media. As long as the media exists, the independent media, I think the more the better getting information out.
Well, and you have a lot of people that sort of think about a lot of things differently. We have our own experiences, which are limited to our lives. So, and you can't read everybody. So, one of the things that you get to do is to kind of distill it for
Right.
all of us, which is kind of fun too, right?
Yeah, that is fun. It really is. Ratasha Smith, who talking about fun, she's one of the fun people in New Haven, wrote in, "What is the status of the mayoral social media specialist jobs you and Lawrence were pushing for?" Thank you for listening, Ratasha, and thank you for the question.
You know, it wasn't funded by the Board of Alders. I guess they kind of see things a little bit differently. But so what we are trying to do is the best that we can without funding.
So when you met those kings on Friday, they didn't tell you about how to just not have to worry about other people telling you what you can and can't do.
They didn't bring me any gold, frankincense, or myrrh.
And thanks to everybody who's been listening and giving questions to English Station.
Uh-huh.
Now, one of the successes New Haven has had in recent years was to find an opportunity, which was that United Illuminating was being sold to this for $3 billion to an international energy giant from Spain, Iberdrola. I don't know if I said that right or not. But we saw a chance there to accomplish something that was elusive for decades, which was to get the English Station former power plant cleaned up PCBs. Now we found out asbestos on that island there right off Fairhaven so that we could use it for other purposes. UI no longer owned the island, was only going to put $1.7 million in, and you called your friend George Jepson, the Attorney General, and he struck a deal as part of them getting permission to be sold to that energy giant to spend $30 million cleaning it up. So do you know much about how that's going?
I think that they are in the process of cleaning it up. And, you know, the real question now becomes how much is it going to cost us? Going to use all of the $30 million. If there's money left over, can we clean it up to a higher standard and then let it out so that a developer will come and develop it?
So originally it said it'd be done in 3 years. That was August 2016. I'm told now that it's pretty much on track and that, in fact, it probably will not go over the $30 million. If it does, they have to apply to PURA, which is the former DPUC, the regulatory agency, but that there were a few unforeseen blips. They found bags of asbestos that had been in one of the station buildings. They didn't know were there. And now they have to take down the building that's closest to Grand because it started, bricks from the side started falling onto the Grand Avenue and looked like the building was going to fall down. I think you have a great building department. They were right out there.
Oh, they're great.
And said, we're worried this is going to hurt people. And they made them shore it up immediately so that there wouldn't be an imminent collapse and then make plans to take down. So that's delayed it a few times. Also, it's changed hands a bunch of times. So now there's a new, as of December 21st in land records, I saw that some guy in Kew Gardens, New York, has an LLC that bought it from the two companies that owned it before, who were just in all sorts of financial trouble and were foreclosed on. And it's so hard to find out like who controls the land in our city. So those were two agencies that owned the land. They got foreclosed on by some lender. So I was trying to look up that lender, and there was a document in Hebrew, but it had no vowels. They went to Jerusalem. Some guy at the lender who controlled it was some guy, Abraham Cohen in Jerusalem, was responsible for the lender, but he didn't want to keep the property. They found some other guy named Robert Tropper in Kew Gardens, New York, who had an LLC. And the best I could tell from him is that he has these odd companies all have the same address, which is like he has like a medical supply company and an internet safety company. And I called him because there are a lot of people with the same name, but I got him, and he said, well, it's too early to know because it's going to be a year away. So it's kind of hard sometimes to find the people who determine the fate of our real estate,
No, that's true, because a lot of it's owned by people out of town.
But, I know that the goals you folks have at this point is not cleaning it up to the level of residential, but to have a commercial purpose, which is doable. And that you were talking about some green energy projects there, right? Like jobs in solar power arrays or natural gas.
I think those are some of the kinds of things that can happen. There might be some light manufacturing that could happen over there. So,
Those are good jobs.
hmm
I kind of feel like that's some of the jobs we would like to add to our roster in New Haven, right?
I think we need those kind of jobs. We really do.
And not every land has to be apartments.
That's right.
But you know what I was wondering about apartments, Mayor
What's
Hart?
that?
So they're the Temple Medical Center.
I was wondering if you're going to go there. Yeah.
Well, that's a big deal. That's a
That
big
is
complex
a big deal.
there.
Yeah.
And Yale New Haven has changed its business plan.
hmm
Years ago, it had bought up all those individual doctor practices at Temple Medical Center that were independent. So now they're owned by Yale New Haven. Then Yale New Haven bought St. Ray's. It started building some facilities in the suburbs. I mean, it's like the weather. Healthcare changes, and it's not good or bad. Just the way it happens changes, it has impacts. So the impact was they decided it no longer made sense to have the doctor offices there, which I kind of understand. The parking issue, and they have other facilities. So it's going to be empty as of the spring, and they can't get anyone to buy the place. So they went before the litigation settlement committee,
hmm
and they got an agreement to lower the taxes a lot so they could try to sell it. Any thoughts about what should go there?
Well, no, I noticed, though, in your article that a number of people thought that it would be a great place for housing.
That's what I was wondering.
And, but I'm wondering if it might also be, I don't know how it's set up, but could it be a space that we use for bioscience labs?
Ooh.
That might be some other thing to consider. I know that there are those who believe that we need 75 to 100,000 square feet of that to really begin to build the incubator space that we need in the city to grow some of those businesses. So
That's really interesting. You'd be only a block or two away from 300 George Street.
right.
So there's a connection, and you're right over the highway, which we're, I think, eventually closing up there,
Right.
the mini highway, to Yale Medical School, which is
And you
what's
could ride your bicycle. You could be right there.
Do you need a wire in your sweatshirt, or can you have like a gateway?
Maybe on your hat, right?
So that's very interesting, because that was another question I was going to ask you, whether you would need, it would be more difficult to do housing because of radiation labs, or maybe I'm ignorant about that. Were there certain kind of permits needed to have radiology and other kinds of medical practices that could, that might pose a danger to residential living? I don't know.
Or would require a lot of remediation. But it might be a perfect spot for bioscience.
So how would that happen? Would you try to find a developer to do it? Would you go back to Carter and Stanley? Would you?
Yeah, I know that the ECIC program, which is part of Connecticut Next, is looking as we speak for 75 to 100,000 square feet of bioscience space.
And it is clustered there.
And it is clustered there, and it seems odd that they're doing that, but they're going to need an infusion of cash from the state.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps some from us as well, from the city. But it seems like that's sort of like the logical place for us to grow businesses.
That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, well, so we'll see whether or not they think that that's an appropriate place or not. But it is close to the medical school. It's close to other labs in our city. So I could see that working.
Oh, I hope that happens. Now, why do you think it was necessary to lower the taxes then? Because if lowering the taxes to try to get a medical facility, maybe you didn't need to do that if there'll be other uses.
Well, I think that what they were worried about is that they'd had, as I understood it, a couple of deals that had fallen through because of the expense. And, there's just been most recently this initiative to think about the different kind of incubator space that we might need that I'm thinking, this is just me thinking that it would be an appropriate space for. It may not be what people want.
It might. Have you heard anyone not like the idea of incubator space?
Well, maybe not there, but
Because I threw out the residential idea to you, but then the other part of me said, are we at a point where we're going to keep being able to fill up market rate apartments? Then maybe jobs and incubator space is more important.
Well, I think it's important in terms of building jobs for our city and our region. And yet, if you think about transit-oriented development, they may not work here. They may just want to live here because it's more, it's cheaper, and that you can get on the train or a bus and
Well, that's
And
why they're doing so well with market rate housing downtown.
and and Temple Street is close to the train station, so like we always think of it as being like right across the street, but it's really within a mile walk
yeah,
or a bicycle ride. So
if you have the right sweatshirt.
Oh, okay, there you go.
You gotta have the Y.
Or hat, right?
Yes, and you're listening to Mayor Monday at WNHH FM 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Yeah, so I hope it'll be interesting to see what happens. The other question I had about the Temple Medical, so Yale New Haven changes its business model, right? So that is going to have an impact on our tax base because they didn't just move some of those offices and facilities to the old St. Ray's campus. They have built facilities in the suburbs, which is their right to do. I mean, there's a need in Guilford. There was a need in Milford. What is that going to mean? Has the SETI done any kind of assessment of how the changes in Yale New Haven's business model are going to affect how much tax revenue we get every year from the for-profit side of things?
I think it's something that we look at every year when we put the budget together. And I don't know whether we've calculated the impact of losing Temple Medical.
I just meant more broadly too. If they're gonna take over practices that rent space from for-profit, and then some of it's gonna go to the suburbs. Yeah.
And one of the things that we wonder is if they're taking those, they're going to the suburbs, or they're even building practices here that were for-profit practices before and taxable. Should they not still be taxable? I mean, that's a concern for the General Assembly, but it would seem to me that unlike Yale University, Yale New Haven Hospital doesn't have the same constitutional protections that Yale University has. And so one of the things that we've been trying to figure out is there a way for us to figure out a way for them to actually contribute more to providing services in our community than they currently do.
All right. And we talked about the inauguration coming up this week, and you're going to come back and get us a lot of dish on that. I noticed that Susan Bysowitz's office, Lieutenant Governor, is stock full of New Haveners.
People from the third CD, go figure.
Yeah, what do you think that's about?
Well, we are the highest vote getting city in the state for Democrats. So
23,000 vote margin in the last governor race.
So that might have something to do with it.
But Ned Lamont didn't pick anybody from New Haven for his staff. Susan Bysowitz has only 5 jobs, and one of them is Adam Joseph, who lives in Morris Cove.
Right.
He used to work at City Hall. He's the chief of staff. Julie Ortiz, who lives in New Haven, is going to be the press spokesperson. You lost Sherry Phoenix Sharp from your corp counsel's office, going to be her leading legal advisor. Then Jimmy Tickey and Sam Carmody, the other two, they don't live in New Haven, but they worked in New Haven for Rosa DeLauro.
Yeah.
So would she be more interested in New Haven votes for a future election than Ned Lamont, or is that not what it's about? Because I'm not sure that's what it's about. I don't know.
I'm not certain what it's about either. I think that if you look at, I do think that she wants to have a strong presence here, and maybe she feels if she has one that she can anchor that presence for the Lamont team.
Okay, nice. I put it. This weekend starts the whole cycle of events for Martin Luther King's birthday, even though that's not until a week from today, correct? 2 weeks from today we celebrate it, right?
Yes.
2 weeks from today. But this Sunday is the first event, right? In West Haven, celebrating MLK's birthday.
Well, it's actually not in West Haven this year. It's going to be in New Haven at Center Church on the Green. And it's on Sunday at 4:00. And you know what? One of the really cool things, if you've ever gone to the West Haven Martin Luther King event, is that they have the West Haven a cappella choir, and then they have the New Haven a cappella choir, and they sing separately, and then they sing together on both sides of the church. It is absolutely phenomenal and beautiful, and I would suggest to anyone, yes, they're great speeches, but if you want to hear some of the most wonderful a cappella choirs in the region, you've got to come to this event. It's going to be at Center Church on the Green, the one in the middle, from 4:00 until about 7. So come on down.
You do love music.
I do.
You think we're going to see it on Facebook Live?
Maybe. We'll see. You gave me an idea.
All right. Because you're going to force me to go back on Facebook, which I always feel like I give up whole chunks of my life, you know. If
It is, yeah, it is
they
time
can't
consuming.
get back. But at least we'll see good things. Mayor Hart, thanks so much for starting out the year right here on Mayor Monday.
All right, thank you.
It's always a pleasure chatting with you Monday morning. Thanks to everyone who listened and put in comments, especially people who agreed with my narrow view of the world and my personal opinions.
Well, I think most people agree with you.
Really?
You know? Well, yeah. I
Doesn't
do.
change, though. Maybe they just don't care enough
I think they care.
about transparency.
I think they do.
All right. Good to hear that. Anyway, and I was just joking about liking when people agree with me. I actually like when they disagree more.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I was really sad to see David Hartman go as press spokesperson. I'd love to argue with him. He was a terrific spokesperson for the city. And would have wonderful debates about policing and public stuff. Always came from a good place.
Well, I saw him yesterday at the Children's Community Center on Blake Street because he's working for Rosa DeLauro now.
I thought we weren't supposed to say that. Oh, it's already started. Okay.
He started.
I'll tell you, that guy's a great writer.
Oh, really?
It was hilarious. I mean, what he wrote in that press department for the police, we would sometimes just print it on full and just say, look, he wrote it. There's nothing to change. Or sometimes be funny. He wrote a poem about, like, you know, what steps to take to be safe at bars. Or, like, when the wine thief stole wine at the wine thief place. He talked about what temperature they were chilling it. And he would really labor over it like a real writer. I mean, he really has the soul of a writer. And he's written some first-person pieces that are just terrific and very humble.
Well, I hope that he continues to write. And, you know, oftentimes people on our police force have many other talents besides just policing.
It's true.
Yeah.
Including the entrepreneur who started the great party bus downtown.
Oh, that's right.
I love that one, Christian Bruckhart. That's one of the best additions to the city. Well, that was off the track to say thank you to Gateway Community College and Bertram Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. We know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH New Haven's home for community radio.